Hello! I was considering what to do for today's video when I realised it's pretty much halfway through the year now, just a bit over, but never mind about that. So I thought, what better way to celebrate that milestone than talking about my bookish year goals and how they are going. Now firstly I will say, how on earth did we get to this point? Like, Christmas was it just happened like a few weeks ago. Life. But anyway, so I set myself a few challenges at the start of the year. They were sort of unofficial challenges. I wasn't overly crazy, but actually I've quite enjoyed doing them, and they have sort of become an official thing that I do slot into my reading now, and they're quite handy to have. They're sort of expanding my reading taste even more, which is excellent. So this year I set myself the challenge of reading one short story collection a month, one non-fiction a month, and I don't think I spoke about it on my channel, but I also set my personal goal of reading one reread a month, because I wanted to firstly read more short stories and non-fiction, and was finding that even though I owned them, I was finding it quite hard to slot them into my actual reading, especially with short stories and non-fiction. Actually, I tended to read them on the side of my main fiction read, and I definitely think with short stories the enjoyment is hindered. And I would say with non-fiction as well, less so. I could do it easier with non-fiction, but I was doing it less with non-fiction anyway. In short stories I was literally just reading on the side a short story every few days, and I read one short story collection. I think it was Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber, and I wasn't 100% sure whether it was a short story collection when I went into it. It was, but I really enjoyed the experience of reading it as a whole complete thing, and you sort of got a completely different element from it reading it that way. So that's what I decided to do. Admittedly, I have found that some short story collections work better read in bits. A lot of short story collections have similar themes or similar stories. In that case, it would work better to read them in just a story here and there. But for the majority, I've really enjoyed reading them straight through. I've also really enjoyed actually getting to some non-fiction picks. And in terms of my rereading, there was a few books that I really wanted to re-experience, but because I had so many books to be read, I couldn't justify rereading. So making it a part of my unofficial reading goal has sort of helped me really get to those books that I wanted to reread. Something that's been going on for a year or so now, a bit over, it's not just this year, is that I get a book a month from the library, so I'll be talking about that as well. So firstly, I will say I have not failed in my tasks on any month apart from last month, when I didn't read a non-fiction through completely because I started reading Moranifesto, which is a collection of Caitlin Moran's articles, and I just couldn't read that straight through. So this is an example of one that would be better suited to just reading bits here and there. I tried reading it straight through because I really didn't like the idea of having it on the sidelines, but it was just too much, especially as the articles are grouped into sort of sections of similarity. So you read two articles and they're on the same subject and you just start thinking, oh really? So that has sadly drawn my score down, and it's still currently haunting me at the moment. I don't know if I'll finish it, but there we go. I'm kind of not being too harsh on myself, because it's not like I didn't read a non-fiction last month. I just didn't read it through fully, but I did get about halfway through, so it could have been worse. So I wanted to talk about some of the books that I'm very glad that I got to with this task. So in terms of short story collections, one of the first ones I read this year was The Girl in the Flammable Skirt by Amy Bender. Amy Bender is the author of The Particular Sadness of Lemon Cake and is fantastic. If you haven't read that book, I would definitely recommend it. It's got magical realism in it, but it's not too much so. It's just the right amount of strangeness, and the writing is perfect. The Girl in the Flammable Skirt is her first short story collection, and it wasn't, like, looking back on it, I remember fond memories of reading it. I think this was possibly the first short story collection I picked up actually and read straight through. So I remembered really enjoying that experience. I have highlighted 4 stories in here that I really enjoyed. There were some that were okay, some that weren't, and some that I really loved. I'm finding this with short story collections. I don't think there's a short story collection out there that I've loved every single story, but it's quite fun for me, especially tabbing the ones that I really do like. and I think it kind of is just how it goes, that you're bound to not like some and like others. I think the first story was my favourite, which is about her boyfriend is reverse evolutioning and becoming basically just a little sea urchin thing, and it's called The Rememberer. So that was very good. But yes, worth a read if you are wanting to get into short stories. Then I have Kirsty Logan's The Rental Heart and Other Fairy Tales. At first, I really wasn't enjoying this. I was reading it through and just thinking that it wasn't blowing me away. I really liked The Rental Heart, the title story, but other than that, I wasn't getting it. I then went back and reread a lot of the stories because I kind of think it was where I was at. I wasn't fully paying attention, and I forgot the fact that it's sort of fairy tales. So there's a lot of elements of other fairy tales in these stories. And I went back and actually I enjoyed quite a few of them. I think my favourite in here was either The Rental Heart or The Light Eater. It's a very short story, but it's about a girl who eats Christmas lights and things, and I really liked that idea. So it's really different. Again, there's magical realism in here, but not too much. It's just a nice undertone of strangeness again, and it's definitely worth a read. This is the only short story collection I have given 5 stars to, and it is Padraic Tarrant's Broken Things. As you can see, I loved so many stories in here. Pretty much all the stories have tabs. The writing is phenomenal. I will link my individual review down below if you want to know more, because I have done a full review of that one. So that's the short stories I've been loving. In terms of non-fictions, there's not so many that I've absolutely loved. To be honest, I can't really remember overly the ones that I've read, which is a bit strange, but anyway. And I've got Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer. I didn't love this, but it's been on my shelf for a very long time, and I'm glad I finally got to it. I bought it not fully realising it was going to be so much non-fiction. Like, I don't know what I was expecting from it, but I wasn't expecting what it was. So I sort of had resigned that I was never probably going to read it, but I couldn't bring myself to give it away. So I'm very glad I got to this one. This follows the story of Chris McCandless, who went to live in Alaska. He pretty much renounces all his objects, gives away all his money to charity, and goes to live in Alaska. And I'm sure a lot of people know it doesn't go well for him, but it sort of looks at why it didn't go well for him, and the sort of fact that a lot of people give him a hard time and say, especially like wilderness explorers, say that he was just inexperienced, etc. And I think Jon Krakauer kind of sympathises with Chris McCandless's case and looks at it from both sides, talks to the family, and also intersperses in there stories of other explorers and also stories of his own exploring. So that's definitely worth a read. It's more heavy on the non-fiction. It's probably one of the heaviest on the non-fiction that I have read, but it's still worth a read. And also, this was Just Kids by Patti Smith, and this was a non-fiction reread, so I got two birds with one stone in that month. And I'm not going to say much more about this because I go on about it all the time, but it's so good, and I'm very glad I got to reread it. And then in terms of other rereads, I have got books that I thought that I didn't like that actually I've seen different things in, like Jeffrey Eugenides' The Virgin Suicides. It still wasn't a 5-star read for me, but it got 4 stars, and before I would have given it 2. I really didn't like this when I read it as a teenager, but I think I missed a lot of the subtle undertones and the poetic way that this is written, so I'm very glad I got to reread that one. And also Howard Buton's When I Was 5 I Killed Myself. This sort of worked the opposite way for me. I would have given this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it when I read it when I was younger. Spectacular book. And rereading it, I didn't overly enjoy it. It was okay. It would have been a 3-star read for me now, which is a bit bizarre, but there we go. In terms of library picks, I've really been enjoying going to the library and picking out books. A lot of the time I'm getting to the point, my library's not the best, so I'm kind of getting to the point where a lot of the time I don't really know what to get, which always irritates me because I never normally have issues, and it really frustrates me when I can't find anything. But I've started taking out short story collections predominantly from the library, so again, 2 birds with one stone. At the moment I currently have Truman Capote's The Complete Stories and Miranda July's No One Belongs Here More Than You. I was very excited to find this because I had this on my wish list, and also I have already read Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote, which I also got out from the library and really enjoyed, so I'm looking forward to hearing more of his writing. And that's everything I have to talk about, really. So it's gone really well. Let me know, do you have any goals this year that you're trying to follow, and how are they going if so? And I'll see you later. Bye.